Hi, everyone. I am Mirela Ciobanu, senior editor with The Papers. We are an online magazine covering news about payments and digital transactions. And today, together with my panelists' help, we are going to talk about digital identity. So in a way, it's nice that we started the day with Daniel presenting the Global Assured Identity Network. And we are approaching to its end with a similar topic that is very, very important. And why is it important? Some say that if you solve identity, the rest is accountancy. And we cannot agree more, because if you think about digital identity, it can unlock lots of benefits for us as individuals, but for businesses alike in all sectors. So today we talk about banking, fintech, but you can also think about telecom, healthcare. We have these COVID certificates where digital identity plays an important role. So the fact is, we already have the technology. Everyone agrees. We are very advanced here. But it's about the rules and the compliance. It is about how we set right strategies to benefit most from digital identity. And here is the role of governments, banks, other providers within the industry. But I won't say too much, because I have here some lovely guests here with me present, but also we have online. We'll see soon. So we have Uwe Hertel from Intersect. We have Mikal. I'll leave the floor for you in just a moment. I just want to, tell everyone the lovely guests I have. So we have Mikal from OneSpan. We also have Eliad from Coriander. And online we have today Andrei from IT Smart Systems, and also Bogdan from the European Commission. So I'll leave my guests to say something about themselves. Uwe, just the microphone. Yep. Just one moment. So the audience, can we hear Uwe speaking?
I think now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Mirela. Yeah, my name is Uwe. I work for Intersect. I'm country manager for Central Europe. Intersect is actually a South African fintech, and really passionate about securing all kinds of digital transactions. And we are involved in everything which is about strong customer authentication, especially in Europe when it comes to PSD2. I think we have quite a strong footprint in Central Europe, in different countries when it comes to securing login, banking transactions, and 3D secure transactions. And our last success story, and then I really hand back, is actually, so we just launched the world's first project in implementing FIDO when it comes to payments, right? So that's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Uwe. Mikal?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michał Wawrzyński, and since 18 years I've been supporting customers basically in choosing and buying the technology solutions. I've mostly worked with the financial sector customers, including banks. Over a year ago, I decided to join OneSpan. One of the reasons was, I've seen the company going through the digital transformation from traditional hardware tokens to more modern software and cloud-based solutions. I have some experience in that space, so I thought this would be great. If you don't recognize the OneSpan brand, I don't blame you. We are here in Romania. We are much better known as Vasco, the previous company name. And if you've ever transacted online with hardware tokens, you have probably used one of Vasco's devices. But today we also serve other Romanian banks like BRD or BCR with mobile authentication, or the most recent and advanced risk assessment project at Orange Money, where we deliver the full authentication and risk assessment platform. So that's who we are, and that's what I do.
Great. Now let's go to Eliad. Don't worry, guys, we didn't forget about you.
Thank you. So I'm Eliad, I'm the founder and CEO of Coriander. We're a payments-oriented user management, so very relevant to identity. We provide services for PSPs, fintechs, marketplaces, all the way from onboarding the customers or the merchants, all the way to payment processing, if it's credit card, alternative payment method, 3D secure authentication, and of course managing the risk and fraud all the way to payouts and then wire transferring the funds externally. On the banking verticals, we work with EMIs as their banking platform, connecting to several banking as a service provider to allow a centralized interface for the fintechs in order to integrate and to build their offering. So in essence, we have multiple KYC, KYB provider, multiple banking as a service provider, and then build a suite of offerings so the fintechs can actually build a unified interface for their customers.
Okay, and now for the guys that are with us online. Andrei, could you please share something about yourself?
Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible. Thank you, Mirela. Really excited to be here today with you, with Uwe, with Michal, Bogdan, and Eliad. So again, my name is Andrei Dumitru. My background includes digital identity solution architecture in the executive partner role with IT Smart Systems. Digital identity and omnichannel banking professional services are our bread and butter, to say so, at IT Smart Systems, and we have quite a solid track record, which I think goes more than 12 years back now. We are mostly working with our partners at OneSpan here with Michal, partners such as ForgeRock and Backbase to solve some of the most complex challenges around the security of omnichannel banking and digital banking in general. Lately, I had the privilege to be invited to co-author Game, which was also presented in the event keynote earlier. And I really appreciate Daniel being in Bucharest today at Banking 4.0, sharing a lot of insights and guidance around this identity initiative. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here today in the security panel with Michal here, which is representing our close partner OneSpan, and I look forward for a solid discussion on identity. Yeah.
Great. And now let's go to Bogdan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, hello everyone. My name is Bogdan Stefan. I work for the European Commission in DG Connect. It's an acronym which I always forget, so it stands for DG Communications, Networks, Content and Technology, but shortly DG Connect. This is the, let's say, the digital arm and leg of the Commission, and as you probably know, the current Commission has a lot of emphasis on digital. There are lots of legislative initiatives which are in preparation. Some of them, they already have been adopted, but why am I here? To raise your interest on what we are working on digital identity, on their hot times. Probably you know the regulation which is currently in force, the EIDAS regulation, which stands for Electronic Identification and Trust Services. It's currently revised, so there is a proposal from the Commission which comes with a completely new approach, a new paradigm to digital identity, and I hope I will have more chances to, more space to develop it further during the debate. So it brings a lot for the financial sector too. So I'm not a financial sector specialist, but hopefully I will be able to convey a positive message on the opportunities it brings for the financial sector of payments in general. So I'm looking forward for the discussion. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm sorry I couldn't make it physically because of the conditions. Thank you very much, Mirela, and hello all.
Yeah, no problem. Probably next year, most probably we'll meet again here, all of us. So you make sure, Sergio, that you bring extra chairs. But now let's dive into the topic. So to set the scene, let's see from all my guests, what is digital identity in a nutshell, and what are the risks and benefits that you personally perceive when it comes to this topic? Uwe.
Okay, I may have quite a simple explanation or definition. For me, digital identity is actually described by the data which actually describe a physical person or a thing, right? A device. And the relationships these persons or things have within the digital environment. That's in a nutshell, at least my definition. And for me, the risks and benefits, I mean, there's a lot of benefits. I think I emphasize on the benefits is that it can make, for example, onboarding of persons to any kind of application or service much, much easier in the future, actually almost seamless. And digital identity can be well used for authentication, right? I mean, so we put a lot of hope, our company, and I think the whole market in the use of digital identity. The risk for me, if there is a risk or kind of, I would call it a challenge, right? The challenge may be that it will probably take a while until we have compatibility of different existing infrastructures or systems. Yeah, that will probably be the challenge for the near and midterm future.
Okay, now let's see what is Michal's definition for digital identity.
Well, yeah, so thank you for the question. I'm not going to repeat the definition, obviously. So let me add my perspective. For me, you know, the critical part about digital identity is that it's actually a process, right? It's a process of establishing the digital identity based on all the data, right, that Uwe mentioned about. Then proofing this identity in whatever form, using, you know, physical methods or some other online challenges, and then using this digital identities to all the benefits that Uwe also already mentioned. So it's not just, you know, for me, it's not just the concept or, you know, technical idea. It's more of a process to create and maintain the digital identity throughout the life cycle. And for us, the life cycle is really our lives, right? So it needs to adapt to the changes when we grow, right, from kids to adults, when we get married, when we have our own kids, right? It needs to adapt with us. And that's all about digital identity. Thank you.
Great. Now, Eliad, let's see.
I'll try to simplify. For me, digital identity is the safeguarding of the relationship between a consumer and a merchant and a business for the other side. On one hand, safeguarding the customer, not having his identity stolen with the ease of use, stealing a credit card, stealing a wallet, and then doing online transactions. And on the business side, the chargebacks when a card gets stolen, etc. So if there is a proper validated digital identity, that both parties know that this customer has been validated and the merchant only willing to accept digitally identified customer, they both protect each other. And in that kind of relationship, the higher approval ratio between relationship, if it's a banking transaction or a traditional credit card or alternative payment method, it will be easier for everyone in the process.
Okay, now let's go to our guys online. Andrei?
Indeed, I think with the end customer being at the center of everything we do, you know, especially in the digital business, maybe. So with the customer being at the center of everything we do in the connected world, I think digital identity should just, you know, enable quick and simple registration, set up online account, and then have the customer get the access that he wants to, access to online services with the just appropriate level of security and friction. And I want to highlight that from my point of view, the key here is to provide just the appropriate level of friction and balanced security.
Okay, and let's see Bogdan's view on digital identity.
Thank you, Mirela. It's difficult to come with more than what has been said. So I'll try to kind of wrap up everything. I would say that digital identity is everything that we have as digital footprint online. And it can go at different levels. It can start from the, let's say, the digital identity linked to your official identity. So that the electronic identity which we use, for instance, to access financial services, here we need a high degree of certainty on the identity of the person, of the customer, as it was mentioned. But then it can also be, for instance, any other, we call them in the, let's say, in the current regulation jargon, attributes or credentials. So what the Commission has done now, we came with a different approach. in addition to the, let's say, the classical sense of digital identity, the electronic identity used to access public services or private services, where you need to know that whoever claims to be is the person who claims to be, we added a different layer, the so-called attributes. For instance, the fact that you're a doctor, the fact that you're a lawyer, the fact that you are whatever professional qualification you may imagine. These are interlinked and are strictly linked to our identity. And currently, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to actually assert them online. There are very few cases. There are qualified trust service providers issuing attestations, but what's most importantly, they cannot be asserted cross-border. So if there are such possibilities, they are used at national level. So besides the core identity, I would add the attributes dimension, something about me, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a student, something about what I can do, a credential, a digital driving license, for instance, or whatever other credential which entitles me to do something, to have a right or a permission. And beyond that, we can think of any other digital data or personal data, because it's still personal data which one can find online. So I try to wrap up a bit what has been said by the colleagues. So just to finish, and as I said, the current regulation of the Commission brings this novelty, the attributes dimension, to be expressed, brings this possibility to express these attributes in the online world. And later I will develop how this is relevant for the banking sector.
Okay, great. Yeah, I will stick to you for a moment, because you mentioned the Commission involvement within this space. And I was wondering who should be leading this task of creating a digital identity infrastructure layer. And here I would also like you to say something about the Europeans' initiative to create a digital identity wallet for its citizens.
Yes, thank you, Mirela. Thank you for the relay. If we refer to the official identities, physical identities, for instance, there are only the member states that have the prerogative to issue these identities. On the basis of these official, let's say, physical identities, a correlative digital identity, for instance, in the form of a mobile app or an electronic identity card, can be issued by the member states. So in relation to the official identities, I think everybody in the room agrees the member states, they have the main prerogative. What actually happens today is that, and it's well known, the banks, they provide also identities, because they have a lot of information about the customer, so they can provide identities with the same legal value, but because they are endorsed by the member states. So, for instance, I saw that there will be presentations on NEM ID or Bank ID. In this case, the state had a partnership with the banks and agreed that the official the digital identities of the citizens will be provided by the banks. So it very much depends. Currently in Europe, it's a let's say fragmented, but not in the bad sense. There are different approaches. There are member states who really stick on this practice, and they issue themselves, but they, let's say, externalize the issuance of the official digital identities to the private sector, be it a service provider or to the banks. Now, what you asked me about the digital identity wallets. Indeed, this is, I would say, revolutionary, and I'll tell you why. Why I think it's revolutionary. Because it will bring what we don't have today. And I think it was mentioned in the previous panel. I entered 50 minutes before, and I heard we have no way to express or to have interoperability between this identity at European level. With your Romanian digital identity, to be able to open a bank account in Norway, or okay, it's not part of the EU, but still part of the EA, but in whatever EU member state. So basically, what are the wallets? The wallets will be developed by the member states, and they will allow the citizens and companies to access both public and private services cross-border. So once they are issued by the member states, a citizen will be able to access any service, any public service or private service in Europe. At least this is the goal. So this is and of course it will be much more convenient. We expect that the number of transactions will explode. And how is it going to be done? Because you'll ask, okay, but what about interoperability and so on, which is the key factor? It will be based on common standards. So all the member states, each individual member states will follow the same technical standards. They will be certified according to the cybersecurity, to the highest security requirements, to the highest GDPR requirements currently available, and they will be interoperable by default. Of course, it's a huge task, but I can tell you that there is commitment from the member states to go in this direction. I could talk much more, but I'll stop here just not to monopolize.
Yeah, regarding being a huge task, yeah, we heard this morning that some steps have been already taken. We heard about the GAIN initiative, and Andrei is part of the 100. I saw that today were 154 experts. So he's is part of this innovative group. Maybe he can share more about the GAIN initiative and
yes.
how it can help financial services.
Sure. So to your question, who should we trust to be at guardians? I would definitely, relate to what Bogdan said and say that I don't think there will be a single guardian, even if we are talking only about public sector e-business or just private also. So I don't think there is one size fits all solution to like any digital business use case. So we have probably the wallet approach that Bogdan also mentioned a bit, which maybe goes a bit to the decentralized identity space. And I think there will be some conversation today in the panel on decentralized identity, which puts more control in the hands of the customer. There is also, the actual centralized identity built around maybe state authority. There have been some examples with state authority identity providers and the ecosystem built around them. Another interesting stream, yes, it would be GAIN probably, where we have, banks or other regulated providers that can help accelerate digital business use case from their position as identity providers. And here, yes, we had Daniel from Yes today, providing his vision on this, but also the perspective of the paper, of the GAIN paper, where all the participants in the ecosystem have a certified trust level, with identity assurance being at the center of this ecosystem. So this is for sure one of the options going further. And then I think especially in the private space, we cannot ignore the presence of big tech with mobile presence, Apple ID, with the services that they provide. Some of them are taking postures on privacy in the mobile app space, but I think definitely they will continue to play an important role, and they might guardian some of our digital identity data in the near future. So I really see all these options available on the table. Consumer driving this probably, especially in the private space. Bogdan, I think he's very knowledgeable and he can speak more on the public space, but in the private space, I definitely think consumers will be driving this. Their choice, their convenience, driving the adoption, influencing the balance between all these guardians, as you call them.
Okay, so now we talked about projects, initiatives, but we already have some success stories, some use cases that proven their value. Uwe, can you tell us something about Bank ID?
Yes, certainly. Bank ID, it was mentioned a bit earlier, right? And by Daniel, I think this morning, right, when he talked about GAIN. And we realized that whenever you are trying to actually enter or bring your service to the Nordics region, Bank ID is just a big thing there, right? It's a done deal. Especially in Sweden and in Norway, the majority of the population are actually onboarded to Bank ID and use it heavily, right? For many use cases, I think the penetration is 85–90% of the people in Norway and Sweden using this scheme. So for us, it was actually a no-brainer in order to provide our service in this region to actually connect to this service. Not try to do our own thing as we do it in other proprietary solution in other countries, or FIDO approach, right, which is open source as well, but actually align with what's existing there and is already successful, and that's what we did. So we started to connect to Bank ID scheme in Norway, actually, because that's a must-have, right? If you want to play a role when it comes to authentication. So we provide the full flexibility to customer banks, especially in Norway, right? When they ask for security or authentication services, customers by default first use Bank ID. First of all for onboarding securely, but as well for securing very expensive transactions, right, or high-risk transactions, and we just add our standard user experience, right, mobile app-based. So we provide an SDK which allows the usage of Bank ID and biometrics, right? So whenever a step-up is needed, and then first Bank ID for login, for example. Second step, when a customer wants to perform a transactions, biometrics. But this is fully flexible, right? So customer client banks can customize it and configure it however they like it. It's available, right? And for us, it was a prerequisite to get into business in Norway, and it's the same in Sweden, right? In these two countries.
And we have similar stories for for Belgium. So we'll hear Michal talking about It's Me.
Well, so actually, what I wanted to share is more than just It's Me. It's Me obviously is one of the pioneers, right, in digital identity space from Belgium. And yes, and I'm happy about this use case because they use our technology to enable more than just digital identity. They also allow customers to sign documents electronically with qualified signature, which is quite an important piece of business today. We also have our part in Bank ID in Norway. We deliver the cloud-based and mobile app security to Bank ID in Norway. But I've also wanted to mention one thing that we as OneSpan, we are not involved in, but it's critical, from my perspective as Polish citizen, because that's moje ID in Poland, or maybe the same technology related public service that is called Trusted Profile. And the reason I wanted to mention it is, they've seen very low adoption of the Trusted Profile among population until 2019, when they allowed banks to participate in the programs. So when people could use their banking credentials to basically open their trusted profiles to transact and do business with public sector in Poland, the adoption rise dramatically. And that's one of the really success stories of how banks and financial sector can be instrumental to all of us, right, as citizens. So I really value that cooperation.
Thank you. Maybe Elia, do you want to complement? Do you have other examples?
It's actually a combination between what Bogdan said earlier and the two gentlemen with the use cases. If the government is the one responsible for building the identity, it needs to, at least from my opinion, generate pretty much the same as the PSD2 regulation with the PISPs and the AISP. You have one company that is allowed to do only the account authentication just for authenticating this is the person, and another type of regulation for someone who is allowed to use that identification to initiate a payment with it. Because there's more sensitivity around that, using that identification and passing it along to actually accommodate a transaction. So I think if we go for that approach, it might be easier for companies such as yourself to build those use cases, and it will be much more standardized. Because if you look at the government to build something, let's say a solution to use for payments, not really the case. I'm with Bogdan on the approach of maybe centralizing also licenses like lawyer license, medical licenses, etc., within the same identity, but still within the licenses, what is allowed to expose or not. Not to, let's say, for example, use it for the disadvantage of a person who isn't a lawyer, suddenly knowing that and discriminating against him because they don't have that additional license. So need to be watched out on both cases.
Okay. So now we'll switch a bit the discussion because, yeah, we talked about digital identity, its importance, and now we'll narrow it down to solutions connected to digital identity, like identity verification, authentication, its importance to keep our data secure. For example, I'll stress a bit why is it important. Forrester Research said that in 2022, yeah, there were lots of data exposed, 550 more data than previous years. Also, they noticed that people are reusing passwords. Another story said that 1,100 a person receives 1,133 scam messages per year, which is the equivalent of 3 messages per day. So many numbers. But it's not okay. I mean, maybe at this point, I am actually receiving a scam message. So it's important to protect consumers. But consumers, on the other hand, like I mentioned, reuse passwords. They want convenience. So, yeah, Michal, maybe can you tell us how do consumers want to authenticate?
Well, my answer is very simple. Consumers want options, right? The same way that some people want to go to the bank branch and some want to do banking online or mobile, they need to have options. And the same is true for authentication. Some people would like to have passwords, right? Because it's easier for them to remember their password. Hopefully they are not reusing the banking password for other online services. Some people prefer masked passwords. Some would trust, big tech companies to deliver, the face recognition technologies. And some other, would never use any type of online, authentication, right? And that's natural. I think we cannot really object. We as an industry, we only can help, the financial industry to support all of those use cases. Okay. And I agree with Andrei that he said before. It's all about finding the right balance between security and user convenience. My understanding is all that authentication mechanisms should really be transparent and flexible enough to allow any use cases that you can imagine. Yeah, and that's my perspective.
Yeah, some call this the passwordless journey. And Uwe, could you please share how can financial services providers build their passwordless journey?
Yeah, I mean, just by our service, then the passwordless journey is safe. I mean, how to build it? In the end, our service solution provides full flexibility. However, a client bank, right, or issuer wants to actually configure his service or user journey, we can make it happen, right? I mean, I personally, I'm a big fan of passwordless. So whenever I'm asked for a password or fingerprint, I switch to fingerprint, right? Because it's faster. I don't need to look up in my password manager or involve my password manager. So that's an easy way, right? But I would like to actually support what Michal said. Is actually whatever is preferred by the end consumer should be actually offered, right? I mean, as long as it is two-factor authentication, everything is fine, right? We have client banks actually who tell us, actually, we need to have a step, an intermediate step, and it needs to be a password, a PIN. Customers are used to that. So we need to implement it into the user journey. So fine, yeah, fine, no problem, right? But there might be the young generation which says, hey, I don't want neither a password nor a fingerprint anymore. I just want to have seamless authentication. And I think this will come at some stage. Probably it's available already, right? But it's not permitted yet by the regulator, I think, at least. But this will be the next step, right? Certainly, young generation like to actually authenticate by having the mobile phone in their pocket. So in the end, in a nutshell, I mean, to implement it or install it, the technology, this is not the issue, right? We just provide an SDK, and then a development company integrates it, as easy as that.
Yeah, maybe Andrei, could you comment on this regarding customer identity access management in financial services?
Yeah, definitely, I also agree, and would complement Michal's position on. Of course, we need to offer options to our customers, and so that they feel they control their experience, they control the security. So in this discussion now, I'm going to just take a stand and advocate for passwordless in a way that I really feel that this is especially of relevance for digital native people. So we hear a lot from our customers in financial services, or maybe from professionals such as digital banking product owners, is that they are in this quest, they are in this search of the sweet spot, where both security and exceptional UX meet. And what we see is that passwordless, using the FIDO approach, is exactly that sweet spot for digital identity. And again, especially valid for digital native people. This is why I'm advocating in this direction. And this is because on one hand, we have the security part, which includes compliance, as Uwe also mentioned. I mean, if we look at the security model, where experts, analyze the threats and the vulnerability vectors, it is obvious that, FIDO WebAuthn-based passwordless solutions have clear advantages over, quality passwords. They have clear advantages over SMS-based or OTP-based authentication, and they all have clear advantages over app-based authentication. On the UX part, customers just love the convenience and the comfort that the biometrics offer to them, and this, in conjunction with FIDO, this is a really powerful tool. So passwords, it's with the technology and with the innovation that we have available right now, passwords are just lose-lose. I would advocate for it. They are just lose-lose. I mean, they have a bad user experience and the bad security, and especially in the digital native segment of the people. So the good news, I think, is that for good news for professionals in retail, professionals in financial services, is that the introduction of this FIDO passwordless authentication can be really fast for them, and it's one of those initiatives that can prove quick time to value. Customers can continue to use their existing credentials, but they can also opt in, even in a phased approach, how they feel in comfort, to go passwordless. Yeah, so yeah, Mirela, so we are, IT Smart Systems, we are really excited to, start any detailed conversation on this, and, share our knowledge and our partners' knowledge together with Michal and OneSpan, maybe with this, potential partners or customers to spread the word on this.
Yeah, and I want to relate to, you said the fact that users want convenience and they like using biometrics, and we know that under GDPR, biometric data is classified as sensitive data for which the collecting and processing are only permitted in limited circumstances. So if we are referring to this, how can we make sure that this doesn't get compromised? Andrei, maybe?
Yeah, the answer is device-based biometrics. I mean, we use trusted platform modules. We leverage the operating system integrated biometrics. So in this way, the biometric information never leaves the customer device. So technically speaking, those private keys, from PKI, they never leave the device secure storage, which is some of the times it's hardware backed. So this is a really strong security mechanism along the way if you chose this path to use the OS, operating system integrated biometrics. So to my mind, this is how you would say you do biometrics the right way. But yeah, I don't know, Michal, Michal, OneSpan, they have a lot of extensive knowledge in the biometric space. Michal, if you wanna.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I do agree with looking at this physical biometrics attributes like fingerprint or face recognition or that stuff that should never leave the device. That's clear, Andrei. But I don't know if you agree, guys. But there's also this behavioral biometrics part, right? Which needs to be analyzed on the server side. And actually, I'm a big fan of this modern zero trust concept as opposed to defense in depth and building perimeters again around your defenses. And zero trust basically assumes that there was a breach already and your data is out there wild, right? So we as those data processors or banks or any other institutions using this biometrics data, they need to be ready that sooner or later there may be a leak that would involve this biometric data. That means that the critical here, if they are processing this data for example, behavioral biometrics reasons, there should be no clear connection between the individual and the end result in terms of this data, so that even if anyone possesses this stolen, leaked data, they cannot take advantage of it against the individual, right? So that's really critical. Just as a additional to what Andrei said in terms of physical attributes.
Thank you. Uwe, do you want to? Yep.
Only a quick word, right? I mean, another way, I'm fully in line and support device biometrics because I think that's the only way to use biometrics efficiently, and that's anyway a market standard by now. But there is a one way to put additional security, and actually that is device health checks, right? And that if that's done on a regular basis, right, that the backend system sends check messages to the mobile device. Hey, is everything still in order with you? Are you not? Is there no malware, or have you not been rooted or attacked in the meanwhile? That ensures that actually the biometrics stored on the device is in good shape as well, right? So that's maybe just a side comment on this.
Yep. And now for Bogdan, we have a question strictly referring to Europe. How are PSD2, open banking, and eIDAS converging to support the creation of an interoperable digital identity scheme? And we were wondering if GDPR can be a blocker here.
Thank you, Mirela. Maybe just if you allow me 30 seconds to come back on the previous question, which I find crucial. I'm fully with Andrei, Uwe, and Michał on the fact that convenience is key along security, and the fine balance must be found. I would like to add one more element. What customers are waiting for versatility. It means that if they have a digital identity solution, they expect to use it in as many situations as possible, starting from the lowest level of assurance, for instance, to authenticate on social platforms, up to opening a bank account or accessing their e-health data. So I would like to add this layer. An extra layer I would like to add is the control over their digital identity data, or the ability for selective disclosure, so that they do not share more information than needed for a specific transaction. So I think these two extra layers in addition to security and convenience are crucial, and this is how we drafted. And now I come back to the to your last question, Mirela. These three elements were actually embedded in the latest proposal of the Commission on digital identity. Now, how can EIDAS contribute to on what is the interplay with PSD2? I'm not an expert in PSD2, but I can tell you that the requirements for strong customer authentication would be easily fulfilled in the context of the digital identity wallets. The digital identity wallets will be developed at the highest level of assurance, is level high under EIDAS, which means that this is the highest level of certainty in relation to an asserted identity which one can found currently. So any bank could rely on the wallet, on the future European digital identity wallets. First of all, in the onboarding, so they will have high certainty on the identity of the prospective client. Secondly, the banks, they have this customer due diligence obligation under the Anti-Money Laundering Directive. Of course, they could use this also they could use, the wallets could be useful also in this context. And then I was telling you about the extra layer, extra identity layer, the attributes. One could imagine, for instance, banks issuing, we call them in the regulation jargon, qualified attestations for attributes. Mm-hmm. Qualified, it means they are recognized cross-border. So banks, they could very well issue, for instance, credit rating or even CDD data. They could put it in an attestation, and that attestation would be portable all over Europe, could be asserted by any client. I'm Romanian, I want to open a bank account or I want to get a loan in Sweden. I just use my qualified attestation, CTD attestation, or my credit rating, which I got in Romania. And if I have other bank accounts in other member states, I can use those attestations and I can assert them in relation with the Swedish bank. Of course, and now I'm more anticipating the last question on the future, which you mentioned. We'll have a section on that. But so the idea is that there's huge potential. There's huge potential on that. Of course, it doesn't depend only on EIDAS. EIDAS is only a vehicle, is a vector for actually any sectoral attestation, including in the financial sector. So it very much depends also on the harmonization on the customer due diligence and on the Anti-Money Laundering Directive, because you all know there are different conditions in member states. So what I can tell you is that the colleagues are working on this, also colleagues in FISMA, DG FISMA, dealing with financial measures. They are working on the revision of the AML regulation. So there's a strong tendency towards harmonization. So we think that the interplay between these three PSD2, EIDAS, AML regulation, it can only work if there's more harmonization. So on the EIDAS side, we do our job. We'll have the wallet harmonized, asserted, to be asserted everywhere by everyone. There's work to be done on the FISMA side also, but all these things will converge, I think, will be closer to a genuine digital single market, as we try to call it. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we are getting a bit late, and we talked about, I mean, if we are to talk about digital identity, we can keep it on and on. But yeah, we talked also about the future, what our organization viewing. Let's see, how do you see the digital identity space evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? Uwe, maybe?
I mean, as a matter of fact, it will come. I mean, that's for sure. And we already see quite a number of different schemes. So the new Commission regulation, the 2.0 EIDAS, I think that will help a lot, right, to unify hopefully the different schemes. I don't know if an initiative like GAIN is required. I cannot say that, right? I don't know enough about that one.
Don't worry, Daniel left.
Daniel left, anyway. Yeah. And beside that, I'm a big fan, right, of digital identity. I have seen quite a number of solutions where you just take your electronic ID document, tap it to your mobile phone, right, and then it's entered into your wallet on your mobile phone, and that's for me the creation of a digital identity, and then you carry it with you, and hopefully there will be, and I'm sure there will be coming a lot of use cases in the near future, because I mean, I don't want to go to government institutions anymore, right? Especially during COVID times. I would like to do all these processes and use cases offline, right? As much as I can. And on top of that, I think coming back to what Andre said, another open standard like FIDO is helping or could help here a lot, and to bring both of them together is one of our actually one of our objectives, right? We are very well suited with our certified FIDO server. The use cases for FIDO actually pop up everywhere, not only in digital identity but also in just normal banking, in government use cases, of course in payments. So I think the future is actually bright.
Great. Eliad, yeah.
One extent, Matt. So we talked about the example earlier. Look what happened with COVID. Suddenly there's recognition in the COVID vaccine QR code and every passport control that you go over. Talking about 5-10 years from now, let's see, I'm optimistic. Pessimistic, 5 years, nothing changed. We're pretty much at the same place, but finally managed to get penetration. But in 10 years from now, there'll be consolidation of not just the identification, but more your medical health, COVID vaccines, a passport itself, driver's license, everything you need, and not just in the EU. I'm more optimistic. What about the US, other countries in the world? Because there's it's technology. There's no need to be specific for EU or anything else. It's pretty much the same standard. We just have to agree on it and simplify everybody's life whenever we travel.
Okay, Andre, your magic crystal ball.
Yeah, I think we will hear more about probably consent management in the future. This is very related to digital identity, and we already have use cases, right? We have open banking, which is some level of consent, and there are customers already benefiting of this. We have, including in Romania, we have services such as smart accounts within the smart fintech portfolio, which is authorized by the National Bank of Romania. With smart accounts, businesses can harvest some power of account information services with customer consent. So that I expect that beyond PSD2 in the future, we will be seeing complex sharing of resources online maybe, and I think that's something that we maybe delegated administration online, that's something that we should definitely keep an eye out. I also think cloud identity and digital identity managed services will be more and more part of the future in this space. So I think financial services, they and we heard a lot of this in the panels today. They are focusing on the unique experience. They are focusing on differentiating experience for their products and services. While the identity challenge, can be solved in some ways with maybe even API only, digital identity solution delivered or operated as a managed service. And I think we are seeing this a lot in other geographies, and I think we will also be seeing a lot of this in Eastern Europe in the future. So I think there are exciting opportunities in the identity and access management space here.
Thank you, Bogdan. Now you have the chance to explore more with the Visma, I think, topic you.
Yes. Thank you, Mirela. Now I'll come to a keyword which Eliad mentioned: use cases. So I have a dream vision. I see as many use cases as possible linked to the wallets, the digital wallets, but not only. So I think it was Uwe who mentioned the impact of COVID. Well, I think nobody wants to go back now. Once the COVID is there, cynically speaking, it was an opportunity for digital, despite all the sufferance, but it pushed the humanity forward in terms of digitalization, and it brings it brought other benefits at the same time. So I think for me, the future is as digital as possible. You do everything from your smartphone. You manage your relation with the public authorities. authorities, you manage the relationships with your banks, with your fitness club, with whatever you can imagine. You are a Deleuze and all the cards, you have them in your wallet. So this is the future where you do as much as possible. You manage your life, your administrative life, and all the relationship with the authorities and the private online private service providers from a tap of your finger. And I'm not saying necessarily biometrics. And by the way, I will finish with this. Because I think we haven't touched upon something very important, the platforms. I mean, platforms will never be able to offer what sponsored government identity offers. The reliability and the insurance on the asserted identity, on the official identity. I don't think it will be possible to use an Apple ID, for instance, to open a bank account cross-border. Apple cannot attest 100% on the identity of a person. But of course, as I think Andrei mentioned, there's a place for every solution on the market. The people, they have different needs, they have different habits. So there's a place for one place under the sun for everyone in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michal, as you are the last, please, make it not necessarily memorable. We need to finish it with a positive tone.
All right. So let me refer to some of the points I've heard and then expand on them. I do believe in open standards, and I believe FIDO will become more and more important. I agree with Uwe here. FIDO is not ready for all use cases in financial services and banking sector today. I hope it will be very soon. That's one point. The second point that I see more and more important is, and again, referring to transparent, secure authentication mechanisms in the banking sector. Customers do expect to someone take over the burden of securing their digital identities. And I think banks are really well positioned to do exactly that, because they have all the tools and all the technology that could recognize the risks in real time, okay, and return the authentication methods that would be appropriate based on the risk assessment that they are seeing. So that's the future. That's nothing new. That's called adaptive authentication on the market for some time. I just hope that the adoption of this technology will ramp up.
Great, thank you. So to sum it up, I think digital identity will kind of make slim the whales, banking being the whales, and digital identity being the necessary training that they need to leverage to be competitive with fintechs. Thank you, guys. You were really great. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion about digital identity. And you can join in, I don't know, via email, LinkedIn, connect with us.